on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people.
Sound is a portal into a stranger's mind that is incredibly influential.
Welcome to Crew Studios in North Vancouver, where you can find me most of the time. Yes, that was the tip of the hat to the great Ryuichi Sakamoto and his appearance in One World, One Voice, that great music film by Kevin Godley. I've wanted to pull together some concepts about music composition, even sound design, from some filmmakers that I really admire, and then tie those into my interest in Pianobook. Largely to do with the beginnings of a project, the approach, choosing instrumentation, and the mindset you might take.
I've got my palette of things I can do and techniques I've come up with.
Give me an idea of the kind of palette and the kind of tone that I want.
You need an instrumentation box, so to speak. It's narrowing down, consistently narrowing down the palette.
Makes a lot of sense, creating a dedicated, specific, tailored set of instruments, a palette of instruments. It's something I'd like to get a bit better at and remind myself every time a new project comes along. Listening to Ludwig Göransson and Atticus Ross and Trent Reznor talk about sonic world building helps make that stick.
It's really important that every project I do has a unique sound image and sound world.
Going back to the idea of world building, and particularly within Watchmen, we are trying to create a world.
You know, what Trent and Atticus do, it is not just music. It's kind of this it's a sonic world.
There's also the case to be made of limited choices inspiring creativity.
Let's take some colors out of our Creole box.
I think there's like an oblique strategy card that says that freedom inhibits creativity. A quote from Brian Eno.
You know, as with most interesting projects, the constraints become the challenge and become the creativity.
And then there's a choice of instrumentation that usually comes, like what Hans was saying about let's not do this, let's not use these things.
Okay, so what are some of the ways you can develop a palette? Well, first, it might be affected by how much time you have.
Jerry Goldsmith writing Chinatown in 10 days?
No.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
I did it alone in my bedroom in 2 weeks.
That's the baptism of fire.
Yeah.
The opposite, getting the script early, can be really beneficial. I had a fantastic experience getting the script early from Tom Cavanaugh on his short film Tom and Grant.
I started writing the music just after reading the script. So I just started playing the cello a bit, which is my main instrument, and just played around with some melodies and some feelings, and I kind of sat with it.
Then he likes to involve me very early on. You know, we tend to have a conversation about the film before he starts filming, and he gives me the script well in advance. Immediately, a lot of ideas came to mind in terms of structure, in terms of technique, and in terms of instrumentation.
I really like to get involved very early in the process, even before they start shooting. And I like to read the script and just start thinking about how we can create a new sound world together, me and the director.
We started to talk about the musical instruments, and Chris at one point sort of mentioned pipe organs. And if you think about it, I mean, by the 17th century, they were the most complex machine that man had ever created, and the way they look as well. I mean, they look like afterburners on a spaceship. It just seemed fun to try to explore this.
I was really inspired by the art, the visual design, and the design of the logograms, and this sort of circular way of how they communicate. And somehow that informed the music as well, especially early on when we decided to work with these tape loops.
It's interesting, Cliff Martinez and Trent Reznor noting, what about the natural synchronicity of what's of interest to you musically and sonically at the time?
I usually have musical interests at the time I do a project. I had just bought these baritone steel drums from Trinidad. They were sitting in the living room. I was thinking, what am I going to do with them? And then the phone rang and I got the job to do some Mars. And I thought, okay, this is it. Here's my chance.
But also what we as artists are inspired by at that time, like you mentioned marimbas. And hopefully there's something that's inspiring to me as a composer and artist that intersects with what I think is appropriate for this film I'm working on.
But of course you won't really know what's best until you try sounds against picture. And even the best say it may take trying a lot of different combinations.
It's laboratory time, and it's trying everything but the kitchen sink. I hate to make it sound so absurd. Like, how did I find the marimba? I played those dozen things for Tim, finally, biting my nails, and he goes, oh, I like that.
What informed the sounds that you would, and the instrumentation that you would have for this as well?
Things occur to me, that, and I don't know why exactly, and then I'll just try and chuck out a load of stuff and just keep on making things. And then I find in my experience so far, there's a certain amount of things I'll put up against the image and see what it does. And then if there's things that I think are good, I'll show it to the director.
Right now I'm just starting to work on Joel's Macbeth, and I'm very much in that part of the process, which is a kind of a random walk where I try this and try that.
So you think Miriam would be Cesar? Not sure if it's a solo piano, not sure if it's a big band, not sure if it's a Herman-esque kind of orchestra. Once we started, we just thought, let's try a bit of all.
So if you've made it this far, it would be great to read any comments you have, any suggestions on developing your palette of instruments for scoring. Next, here are a few clips I like with suggestions on the mindset you might take.
And I say, well, what's the first thing you do when you start? I say, usually it involves some napping. And they laugh, which you're doing. But it's true, you know, the feeling is that you want to be in a very subconscious state. You want to dream about the film and express something musically without any kind of interference to it, or you want to get like a sort of a direct relationship with what's on screen.
Fundamentally for me, music is conversation. So my interaction as a composer is sitting with the film and really trying to engage in an active conversation with what I'm seeing.
Really just kind of immerse yourself in the script. And before we start writing for picture, we've spent some time deeply thinking about what's being said. And what we realized was if we just emotionally kind of get in the space, then it comes out.
It's approaching it more from the standpoint of being an artist than an artisan. And I'm not saying that with any judgment or any bullshit. I'm just saying that's how we come at it.
I have to put myself in it. I can't just be this add water and stir kind of composer. You know, I'm always going to show up with who I am, and that's going to be a part of the film score.
I don't know about you, but I really identify with those comments. Atticus Ross comes at things as an artist. KATHRYN BOSTIC can't be an add water and stir kind of composer. I think that kind of echoes through what Christian Henson says here about finding one's own voice.
With the tools that you pick, make every sound and note really mean something, and mean something that is personal to you, that stands you out from the crowd.
This makes me think about interviews I've come across of some great composers talking about the notion of being bold, making bold instrument choices, bold playing styles, a bold mindset, encouraged sometimes by the director. As this has become a long video, I'll go into that in part 2. Thanks so much for watching. Here's another gem from Ryuichi Sakamoto. Take care. Peace.
The very first memory about films was when I was around maybe 4 or 5 years old. I was taken by my mother to a cinema, and we watched the Fellini's La Strada. Of course, the 4 or 5 years old boy, it's impossible to remember the content of the film or the meaning of the film, of course. But what I remember still now is that theme music by Nino Rota, of course. And it sticks into my mind still now. And that was the sweetest memory about